You know, there are a few figures who are standing out and standing up and exposing the infiltration of radical Islam into the Western way of life. And I make no apologies for introducing my next guest in such a manner. This is not about criticizing, attacking individual Muslims, but talking about a Western culture, pluralism, coexistence, tolerance, free speech, that is under direct attack. Frank Gaffney is an author, activist, has websites, radio shows. There's not a lot he doesn't do. And thank goodness he is doing it. He joins us from Washington. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, Michael. Good to be with you.
Thank you so much. Now, you've written about this extensively, and this is surprising to many people because it concerns someone who's very highly placed in the government, who seems very westernized, and also, I think, still married to someone who has some interesting ideas about self-photography. But explain all, please.
You are, of course, referring to Huma Abedin. Mm-hmm. She is currently the Deputy Chief of Staff to our Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. She's actually worked for her for about 12 years, going back to the time when Mrs. Clinton was the First Lady of the United States, and she was working with her in the East Wing of the White House. Huma Abedin has an interesting background that has been brought to light, I guess, first and foremost by a course that we have put together called Muslim Brotherhood in America. Yeah. The Enemy Within. It's available for free. It's an online curriculum at muslimbrotherhoodinamerica.com. And Huma Abedin's family has had as kind of a business, really, going back to the late 1970s, running a Muslim Brotherhood front organization known as the Institute for Muslim Minority Affairs. Its mission has been to promote Wahhabism and mosques associated with that strain of Islam, the Saudi version of Orthodox Islam, Sharia, in the West, or places where Muslims are in the minority. She has been personally associated with this as well for some 12 years, including on the masthead of the Journal of Muslim Minority Affairs, the publication of this institute. And what's particularly striking about this is not only the ties between her mother, her late father, her brother, her sister, and herself to this institute. As I say, it's a family enterprise, but also that the person who put it in business is what's known as a golden chain Al-Qaeda financier by the name of Abdullah Omar Nassif. He has done this through the vehicle the Saudis use to fund a lot of Muslim Brotherhood activities known as the Muslim World League. In short, a very troubling background. She's also married, as you alluded to former Congressman Anthony Weiner. But this story, the current controversy surrounds what a woman with these credentials, this background, these ties and associations is doing at the senior-most ranks of the U.S. State Department, especially what she's doing at a moment when American policy is increasingly being brought into alignment with that of the Muslim Brotherhood in the Middle East and elsewhere.
But there are those who would say she is westernized. She wears her hair long and open. She wears makeup, wears modern dress. She's married to a Jewish man. She's just a wonderful example, in fact, of an American Muslim who's part of the mainstream body politic.
I think all of that is true to a point. And the question is, beyond that point, is she helping to advance the interests of the organization with which she and her family has been deeply associated for decades? This is the subject of an inquiry that members of Congress have asked, 5 of them. The most prominent, perhaps, is Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, but she has 4 colleagues, Trent Franks, Louis Gohmert, Lynn Westmoreland, and Tom Rooney, who joined together to ask in thoughtful letters, not only, by the way, of the State Department's Inspector General about Ms. Abedin and her ties and her impact on policy, but actually about a number of other folks who have similar associations, who are, to varying degrees, well-placed to influence policy in other departments of the U.S. government. And I think those are questions that deserve thoughtful, careful investigation and responses. So far, they've not been forthcoming, and that's very worrying.
They haven't at all. The family, I mean, her husband was destined for greatness, of course. They thought he was going to be one of the coming men, as it were, of American politics. She has a lot of friends. She's very connected. What I found fascinating is that people like Michelle Bachmann, when they've questioned her, the tables have been turned, and instead of trying to expose someone who may or may not be a problem at the centre of government, the critics have been accused and condemned as being radical and Islamophobic.
Indeed. This is really sort of the crux of the matter. Is I think the focus exclusively on Michelle Bachmann and the focus exclusively on Huma Abedin is by design. I think it's an act of deflection to try to obscure what has legitimately been asked by 5 legislators about not just Mrs. Abedin, but others who are also, we have reason to believe, helping to shape American policies that have brought the Muslim Brotherhood, or certainly contributed to bringing the Muslim Brotherhood to power in Egypt and elsewhere, that have resulted in the transfer of $1.5 billion tax dollars to a Muslim Brotherhood-dominated government, that have most recently resulted in a terrorist, a known terrorist, being brought into the United States for the purpose of negotiating the release of another one, his boss, the blind sheikh, the man who tried to take down the World Trade Center the first time, Omar Abdul Rahman. This is a very troubling, and those are just a couple of examples, litany of efforts that have clearly been made in recent months and years to transform American policy to the benefit of an entity, the Muslim Brotherhood, that is absolutely clear. Its purpose is to destroy us from within by our own hands. It couldn't be more dangerous, it seems to me, and therefore the questions that have been asked by these responsible members of Congress couldn't be more urgently in need of answer.
I would absolutely agree. And if the answer is a quite clear explanation, and no, that's one thing, but these are important questions and they do have to be answered. Frank Gaffney, as always, a great pleasure. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Michael.